I think music's very impressionable to us when we're young, and I want to showcase 10, 11 albums that were amongst some of my favorite albums when I was 16, 17 years old, 1970, 71, 72. In that period, 72, I would turn 18. These are albums, some would say these are boomer albums. These are singer-songwriter albums. These are, what would you call it? Soft rock, a mix of folk, country, just soft rock albums. I mean, uh, there's one artist here that the later term may apply called yacht rock, and I will accept that. But these are records that we like. These are not considered hip records today. This is not avant-garde jazz or freak folk or indie noise pollution or something. This is just good music. I love these records. And of course, they hark me back to being 16, 17, 18, falling in love and for the first time and being in relationships. And several of these albums actually have my name written on the back cover because I remember around 71, especially that year, 71, 72, I would not loan these records, but I'd go to friends' house and play these records. And these are 11 records in no particular order, and there are plenty of others. So those of you who are in my generation will totally know these records. A lot of people who are younger may obviously have heard of these records, but maybe not get into them now for whatever reason, which is unfortunate because these are really well recorded records. Remember, into the 70s, the recording studios blossomed, and the way these albums recorded, I always talk about It's the Music Stupid, absolutely, but these are really well recorded records with great musicians for the most part. So I'm going to start out in 1971 album, the debut album by America. Now, when this album came out, we heard Horse with No Name, and everybody made the connection to Neil Young. There's no connection to Neil Young. I realize a lot of these records are on Warner Brothers or WEA, Warner Electro Atlantic, the Warner Brothers associated labels. But these are three military brats, I think brought up in Germany on military bases, that made this album. And Horse with No Name sounds exactly almost like a parody of a Neil Young song. I remember in 1972, my buddy Tom and I'd gotten out of I'd gotten out of high school in February of 72, started college at San Francisco State right away in February. And that summer we drove to Canada. We went to Vancouver, Victoria, up through Washington, Oregon, Portland. Went camping the entire way. And we used my mom's 1968 Buick Skylark and had an removable 8-track tape deck. And one of the albums, we had the White Album, two albums I remember specifically, the White Album, Beatles' White Album, and this album, America. I just love the sound of this record. It's not rocket science. It's not anything amazing. Later, George Martin would come on board and re-record some of the songs and produce all their H albums. If you don't know this, all their albums after this, I think, start with the letter H, like a superstition. And, I keep thinking of George Martin like doing the Beatles and then doing all these America albums. Not rocket science and not something really intricate, but just good sounding records. I mean, Muskrat Love's not on this, that's later, but just writing a song. You got to have balls to write a song called Muskrat Love. But Horse with No Name, yeah. I mean, it's so great. I Need You. Great ballads, great kind of folk country things, but what a fantastic record. And this is my Greenie original Warner Brothers record. It still holds up. 1971, driving up to Canada in 1972, an election year. Another album, which was a massive record, it kind of came, it hit the charts all over, and this is, of course, a Maslov edition, because I wrote it, so I brought it somewhere at some point. Not quite sure why I did this, but another Greenie, Warner Brothers Greenie. This is Sweet Baby James by James Taylor. Of course, this produced by Peter Asher. This was a massive hit also. Sweet Baby James, Recorded Sunset Sound in 1969 in Los Angeles. A great, great record. And of course, it has Country Road. Fire and Rain was the big hit. And, he had this connection, which we'll see a little later with Carole King. But the first artist signed to Apple, his first album was Something the Way She Moves. Yes, George Harrison kind of lifted that line from the James Taylor song. But this is a great record. This is a wonderful sounding record. And all the power to him, coming from someone who was really, a heroin addict prior to this. And Peter Asher produced this. He's the one who was A&R for Apple Records and signed him to Apple when he was an expatriate in London. But the Warner Brothers records, fantastic record, Sweet Baby James. Beautiful record. Love it. And the aforementioned Carole King. 1971, this album came out. Again, another one of my Maslow signature special series. This is amongst the biggest selling album by a woman in the 1970s. I think all in all, Linda Ronstadt's the biggest selling of all her albums, but this album was massive. Of course, Carole King and her ex-husband Goffin were songwriters in the Brill Building. Great, great songs for so many artists in the 1960s. And she does this album. This is her second album, I believe. The first one really didn't do much, but this exploded, produced by Lou Adler and Ode Records. A fantastic record. And her and James Taylor kind of cohabitated some of these songs together. I Feel the Earth Move, So Far Away, It's Too Late, Baby. You've Got a Friend, that James Taylor did. Every song on this is a killer song. Tapestry, Ode Records, great singing, great piano playing, a massive hit, and really a good record. I just played this over the last 24 hours, and it holds up. We heard it like records that were so big around this period when all we had was radio and records and 8-track tapes and cassettes. This was one of the biggies, and it still holds up. What a wonderful record. Tapestry, Carole King, 1971 Older Records. Making the connection is these records, I realize, these artists, it's so incestuous. This is, I believe, the second record by Carly Simon, Anticipation. She would later marry James Taylor, and I have a little story about that, a little personal story. I think her best song is the catchy song, Still Is You're So Vain. That's on No Secrets. Not this album with the great vocal halfway through of Mick Jagger. This might be my favorite album of hers. So again, it's got that acoustic sound, that singer-songwriter thing, her great piano playing. The song Anticipation, years later, was used on commercials, ketchup commercials. But it is really good songwriting, really great production. I just love this record. Of course, she would be married to James Taylor. In 1978, years later, my girlfriend and I, who she was a disc jockey, we went to New York together, my first time in New York, and we went upstate. And we stayed in Saugerties, New York, at the home of John and Johanna Hall. You probably don't know those names, but John Hall was the lead singer and guitar player for the band Orleans. Still the one, that embarrassing record cover where they all don't have their shirts, they're not wearing shirts. And we slept in the guest room, and the week before, we were told that Carly and James Taylor slept in that bed. So that's my claim to fame, of sleeping in the same bed as a week later of Carly Simon and James Taylor. But this is a great record. Every song is great. Again, great production. And this is Anticipation. This is, 1972, I think. Or 1971 again. That really pivotal year. I'm 17 years old that year, halfway through it. 8 months into it, I guess. But love this record. Anticipation, Carly Simon. Now we're going to go another album. A very special record. This is 1972, the year I graduated college, and this is Arlo Guthrie's Hobo's Lullaby. Of course, the key track on here is a song that he did not write. He wrote some amazing songs, but obviously the son of Woody Guthrie, being as the son of Woody Guthrie, I mean, what that helps you in so many ways, maybe not in others, but this is a really well recorded record. And of course, the key track on here that literally went to space, went to the moon, is City of New Orleans. Written by Steve Goodman. Steve Goodman wrote it and recorded it on his album in 1971, self-titled album. And then Arlo Guthrie records it. This is the definitive version. I think so many people have recorded that song, Willie Nelson and so many others, and it's a great, great song. It literally went up in space, that song. Ry Cooder is on here. A plethora of artists on here. Clyde King, Jim Keltner, Ry Cooder, Nick DeCaro, Jim Dickinson, Doug Dillard, Chris Etheridge, Wilton Felder, produced by Lenny Warnaker and John Pila. Wonderful songs. There's one Woody Guthrie song here, a lot of just wonderful, again, a great sounding record. And these are beautiful records, easy records, soft rock, yes, folk, soft rock, acoustic based with electric added on, great musicians, just a fantastic record, a beautiful record, and just a really nice sounding record and an easy record. I don't want to even call these easy listening because that gets such a negative connotations, but these are wonderful records, and I know they're not hip, but who fucking cares if they're not hip? They're great records, great music. Now, again, another record with the Maslov autograph here of, so this is another one, and these are my original copies, and I've been playing these over the last few days, and they still sound great. So when someone tells you, take care of your records, I take care of my record. Look at this is a 52-year-old record. It was a 71 or 72 Jonathan Edwards records. And of course, the key song on here that was all over the radio is Sunshine. The acoustic guitars on this are amazing. This is a stunner of a recording, but a great hook, a great song in Sunshine. I just love this record. Oh man. This is recorded in Massachusetts. Jonathan Edwards. He had another record after this. Was it Sunshine Cowboy, Starlight Cowboy, or something, which I also have in my collection, which is really a beautiful record, a great folk rock acoustic based record. But I love this record. Jonathan Edwards, 1972. Next, I could have picked several records. For whatever reason, I picked Nothing But a Breeze, Jesse Winchester. Jesse Winchester, I believe he's from Louisiana, went to Kentucky, Louisiana, somewhere down there. He was a draft dodger. He left the country, moved to Canada, and became a Canadian citizen, so he's dual citizenship. He came back, was pardoned when Jimmy Carter pardoned the, quote, draft dodgers in the late 70s. And I saw him on the first tour at a club in San Francisco called The Boarding House. What an amazing songwriter. His first record was recorded Bearsville, produced by Robbie Robertson of the band. And then he did a series of Bearsville records. This is one of them. All great songs. His songs have been covered by so many people, including Willie Nelson and Emmylou Harris and others. I just love his recording. Songbird is a song that's even the title of a comp by Emmylou Harris on here. And he covers songs like Bowling Green, and he obviously speaks French, being a French Canadian living in Canada for those years. Nothing But a Breeze is the opening track on here. But I love, again, his tenor, his vocals, and his acoustic guitar sound is beautiful on here. Emmylou Harris is on here. Anne Murray's on here. Nicolette Larson is on here. God, such a wonderful, wonderful record. This is produced by Brian Aaron, who produced all those first Emmylou Harris records for Warner Brothers Reprise Records, and just really lovely records. And these are records. The records by Jesse Winchester are fairly inexpensive in the used bins, and I highly recommend them if you like singer-songwriter folk music. Just in, love this stuff. The one Brit, I keep thinking of, a lot of this stuff reminds me of very far East Coast or West Coast, college town music, West Coast, Laurel Canyon, Bay Area sound. This is the Brit here. And of course, this is Graham Nash's first solo album. Of course, Graham Nash, original member of the Hollies, obviously later Crosby, Stills, Nash, and Young. And in 1971, 72, all of them did their own solo records. David Crosby, If I Only Can Remember My Name, a great record. Stephen Stills' first album. And this one has a special, I just love this. 71, I believe, is when I really got into this record. There's one song about Chicago, about the Chicago political Democratic convention with the riots on here. You have Military Madness. This is a light rock anti-war album at times. Beautiful. I mean, he's got the killer voice. I mean, think of Crosby, Stills, and Nash, and then Young. Young has that kind of interesting voice that is not like all the rest. Steve Stills got an intense voice, but interesting how Steve Stills' voice is a really interesting voice. He's got the harshness that blends really well with the beauty of David Crosby and the beauty of the higher notes of David Crosby and Graham Nash here. Wonderful songwriter here. I just love this album. Better Days, Simple Man, Man in the Mirror, We Can Change the World. Again, another politically charged singer-songwriter folk album. And this is Songs for Beginners, Graham Nash, 1971. Really a wonderful record here. Now we're going to someone, now this is where yacht rock really comes in. And they could have invented rock, the term yacht rock for this singer, and that's Jimmy Buffett. I think this is his third album, A White Sport Coat and a Pink Crustacean. This is absolutely my favorite album. It's a takeoff on a Marty Robbins song, A White Sport Coat and a Pink Carnation. This is his best sounding album overall. This is before he got kitschy with Margaritaville and the really kind of the kitschy things that turned into a chain of restaurants and fast food places. But I love him. This is the guy that became like a billionaire before he died a couple of years ago. But this is a fantastic sounding record. Is he from New Orleans too? I don't even remember now where he's from. I saw him a couple times this time because I was into it, especially this record. This is a wonderful recorded record, a wonderful sounding record. The Great Filling Station hold up, a little kitschy there, but Railroad Lady, He Went to Paris. This is the first time he has the Coral Reefers quote. He called them the Coral Reefers, his sort of backup band on this, with Steve Goodman. So we're kind of doing some crossover things here. But what can I say? This is like getting drunk on a boat, playing music, and 5 days out of the week, I may criticize that concept, but I tell you, this is a really wonderful album, wonderful sounding record, catchy, easygoing, just great songwriting. Jimmy Buffett here. This is 1973 on ABC Records. Again, really well recorded there. Now we're going to someone who was really famous, then goes solo, and I wanted to record. I wanted to mention this album because I just love this record, and this is the first solo album by Paul Simon, self-titled. Paul Simon. God, they were the king of the world, Simon and Garfunkel, with Bridge Over Troubled Waters. Bookends happens to be my favorite, but they won a Grammy for Best Album with that, and he comes up with this record. Art Garfunkel would come later with Angel Clare, an album I absolutely love, but didn't have that same kind of acoustic feel on this. Again, the acoustic guitars on this are so wonderfully recorded. Mother and Child Reunion, what a great opening track on this. When I think back and all the crap I learned in high school. Oh, wrong song. That's Kodachrome, right? But both this and the second album that he did, There Goes Ryman Simon, is great. Duncan is probably my favorite song on this. It's got a great, just a great slow circular vibe to it. Lincoln Duncan was my name. I just love that. Me and Julio, that's the hit on here. Somewhat of a hit. Me and Julio down by the schoolyard. Enunciate, Maslow. Me and Julio down by the schoolyard. But listen to the acoustic guitars, how they're recorded pretty much on all these records. This was a time, forget the early 60s folk thing. Obviously, Bob Dylan, Columbia recorded that stuff really well. There's something about the 70s acoustic singer-songwriter, easy folk stuff, crossover, pop stuff that is so well recorded. And these songs are really, really well written. Paul Simon of Columbia Records, self-titled album. And lastly, the other Brit. I do have one more Brit here. Yeah, I do have one more Brit. Because this might be, if I had to pick one record of these 11 records I'm showcasing now, it might be this one. This is the third album by Elton John with lyrics by Bernie Taupin, Tumbleweed Connection. This is so influenced by American country, by the band, that rootsy thing that Bernie Taupin was all over. This is a killer Elton John record. He is one of those artists, him, Stevie Wonder, Cat Stevens to some extent, not quite as much, that every record from 69, 70 till about 76 is a perfect record. And this is one of them. I need to pull the track list out here just because this had an insert of this booklet, Elton John, Tumbleweed Connection. Of course, Country Comfort was, I think, one of the early singles on here. My Father's Gun, Son of Your Father. Very personal record about the American West. Really beautifully written. Love Song, I believe that was written with, I want to say Sandy Denny, but it's not Sandy Denny. Leslie Duncan. Wrong. I'm sorry. I'm confusing my British women singers, and she sings vocals on that. It's so good. Where to Now, St. Peter, Amarina, Country Covered, of course. I said that. Burn Down the Mission. Every track on here is killer. Wonderful. This is probably the less acoustic based than the others. Obviously, it's piano driven because of Elton's playing. But I just think this is a perfect album. He made no bad albums in that 6-7 year run, Elton John, the early 70s. I think this is 72, 73-ish, probably 72. But those are 11 records that I just think are beautifully well recorded, amazing songwriting, soft rock records, If it's too hip for you, or I'm not hip enough, or these aren't hip enough for you, that's your problem, not mine. It's great music. Mazzy loves you. Cheers.